Hi, Sharon. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. How was your day?
Well, we had it's a good day today. It's a good day today.
Yeah, we should hope we have more good days.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
for the sake of people that already started joining us, let's just start.
Looking
Okay.
forward.
So, good evening, everybody. My name is Mirit Hoffman. I'm an elder law lawyer and a gerontologist, and my focus is mainly helping senior citizens when they reach significant junctions in their lives, talking about wills and enduring power of attorneys or guardianships, and also prenups and financial agreements when they reach second or third relationship, which is always the most fun. And from my broad exposure with this group, I came to realize that there are a lot of important issues which are not legal that need to be addressed that concern senior citizens. And so I have this podcast, which is called Golden Topics, Significant Crossroads for Seniors, where I have discussions with other professionals that deal with very important issues. Um, that directly impact a lot of people's lives here. And today we're going to be talking about care management. And I have with me Sharon Beth-Halachmy, which is the founder and CEO of Belev Shalem, which is a senior support service in Israel. And I am very happy to have you here, Sharon. Thank you so much for joining me. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Very well. Thank you for having me. I've been following you for some time in the world of seniors, and have appreciated how broad your scope is and understanding all the different complexities that go along with aging. Period, but specifically in Israel. So I'm Sharon. I'm the founder and CEO of Belev Shalem. We are a geriatric care management company in Israel. Almost 10 years now going. As we move forward, I'll tell you a little bit more about the company, but in general, we provide services across Israel. We do have a special focus for English speakers in Israel, not exclusively, but because we are an English speaking service, we tend to pick up that community. And so, by definition, we have a very strong presence in Jerusalem, Modi'in area, Tel Aviv, Ra'anana, Herzliya, Netanya, where Anglos tend to congregate.
I'm just curious, how did you get to this? Like, what happened that you decided to do this?
Um, kind of by spooks, we say in Hebrew. I was actually an attorney for about 20 years. I always say that I was an attorney with the heart of a social worker. But I was in a corporate practice for many years, both in the United States and in Israel, but looking for a different kind of meaning and a different kind of opportunity to be in more of a help position. And really a chance encounter with Stacy Gordon, who was one of the original founders of what was then Elder Options Israel, um, evolved into a career shift for me, a very dramatic and unexpected one, and a new trajectory, and by chance.
Awesome. It's really great. Okay, so let's start with the basics for people that don't know. What is care management?
So it's a really good question, and it's actually kind of hard to explain. Care management. I'll backtrack a little bit and say that care management has been a recognized profession in the United States for decades. It's certified, it's taught, it's overseen. It's more in its infancy in Israel as a profession. It has picked up a lot since I came on the scene a number of years ago. It's still being defined, and it's still unfortunately not regulated at all, but it has picked up steam. Care management in general is a process. My company specifically deals with aging, but care management is a bigger concept that can also reach into other communities. But it's a process of, at least in the world of aging, it's the process of assessing the needs of the older adult as he or she ages and the family unit, identifying where they need support, and then guiding them or working with them to piece together the support they need to live optimally. Optimally meaning we have sort of our end goal of maximizing independence and quality of life for as long as possible. It's kind of the general definition of a very broad question. Specifically, I'll say it's a super, super, super personalized process. So, what care management means for you and your family means something totally out different for somebody else. And that's where the real value of the care manager is to come in on one hand with a ton of experience and knowledge and know-how, and on the other hand, the ability to really stop and listen and get to know the family and tailor a plan that's very specific for that family and their needs. You know, you'll hear me as this discussion progresses, kind of going back and forth between talking about the older adult and talking about the family, because it's usually a family event. You know, it's not only about the needs of the older adult, it's also about the needs and the ability of their family members to provide support, balanced against the support that the older person wants. It's kind of a tricky, beautiful, wonderful, complicated unit of who is the client. Coming as a lawyer, you
Right.
know, I've engaged for many years in sort of the esoteric question of who is the client. And it's you know, le tov and it's there's never a black and white answer, and in each particular family the answer is different, and even across time the answer can be different. So that's the long answer to kind of the short question of what is care management. I can tell you what it encompasses, which is what we sort of say the holistic approach to aging, or the full range of topics that touch the lives of an older adult in the aging process, which is, you know, the two kind of big ones are medical care and health care, but it's also care in the home, it's mobility, it's home safety and security, it's looking, you know, equipment and accessories, and caregiving obviously is a big one. Looking at family dynamics, helping families make decisions about important things. It's about um, social engagement, intellectual engagement, uh, wellness, diet, nutrition, household management. You know, if you sort of think of yourself as a sandwich generation, a member of the sandwich generation, all the things that you touch on in the lives of your aging parent is what is care management.
Wow. So try and get us to understand a little bit more. So who reaches out to you and why? And let's like give us like a story. Like how does it work?
Right. So if you had asked me this question 5 years ago, I would say that the person who reaches out to me is somebody who is just pulling their hair out saying, I need help. Who can help me? They at that time they knew less to articulate what they were looking for. Today, fast forward, a lot of people know to look for a geriatric care manager. They know that exists out there a professional who can sweep in and make sense of the chaos and calm everybody down and roll up their sleeves and really help. So I can tell you who calls us, and I'm a very visual person. So sometimes I have like visual, you know, imaginary visual aids. Who calls us? Um, Very often it's the person who actually cannot provide the help for their aging parents that they want to. Actually, I'll need to backtrack and say typically the people reaching out are the adult children
Right.
of the aging person. Sometimes also a spouse, and sometimes the person themselves, if they are good planners and savvy about planning for their own aging. But for the most part, it's adult children, sometimes grandchildren, in-laws, but adult family members, what we call family caregivers is kind of the term.
Right.
Um, Very often it's people who, for one reason or another, actually physically cannot provide the support. They live very far away. In the Anglo community, most of us are divided by oceans by default in one way or another. Sometimes it's a family that some children live overseas and some children live here. The reality of Israel today is that someone who lives in Tel Aviv but has a parent in Jerusalem is also needs help because they can't physically be there.
Right.
So it's very often people who actually physically cannot provide the support at the level of support. If you have cared for an aging parent in crisis or in illness or for whatever situation, you'll know that it can be a full-time job. I mean, you can spend a lot of time going to doctor's appointments, running around trying to get appointments, trying to get paperwork, trying to find equipment, trying to hire caregivers. It's a lot. And we live in a world where most people are two income households. There's two people working. There are two people dealing with their own families and children and very often growing children, sometimes grandchildren.
Right.
So it's a lot. So but back to your question, it's very often people who um, for one limitation or another, can't be hands-on. The other situation that people call us in is when sometimes the crises are just a really complicated, back to sort of my visual aids, I sort of sometimes think about the juggler, someone who has so many balls in the air anyway, before, adding into the mix, taking care of their parents. And it's just too much and it's too overwhelming. It's a really steep learning curve, when all of a sudden you're sort of thrown into the world of caring for an aging parent. You have a lot to learn in a short period of time. And so and it can be overwhelming, particularly, and this kind of circles back, if you don't speak Hebrew, if you're not familiar with the system, although sometimes I say people can be really unfamiliar with the system and speak fluent Hebrew. So it's not necessarily a language, obstacle.
Right.
But it's so the second group of people are the people who is just too much. There's too many things going on, both outside the system of taking care of their parents, but also inside the system of taking care of their parents. And they just get overwhelmed and the balls are dropping. That's the second sort of group of people who reach out. The another sort of, sometimes I say, door that opens into care management is crisis management. You've gone from 0 to 100 in a day, whether it's because of a medical emergency, as in old age, the transition from being totally independent to totally dependent can sometimes be very quick. Um, we live in a world where the medical system is uh, overburdened. Hospital discharges happen really fast. We get calls every day. My mother's being discharged from the hospital tomorrow. There's no room in rehab. She needs to go home with home rehab, which sounds really logical until you realize that you have to go get a hospital bed, you have to get an OT set up, you have to get a PT set up, you have to get a caregiver set up, and there's stairs going into the house. So it sounds really kind of nice to do home rehab instead of institutional rehab until you realize you have 12 hours to move everything together. Um, so that's sort of one kind of crisis management. But in general, transitions can feel like a crisis. When you sort of all of a sudden, sometimes an adult, a child who lives overseas, who comes visits a parent who they haven't seen for a long time, and they see that the house maybe isn't up to what it was before, or the mobility has changed, or Elef echad, 1,001 reasons why something needs to give quickly, and that feels like a crisis. It feels like a change. One of the things that really changed um, the world of care management was first COVID and then the war, when people lost the security of thinking, oh, I can just get on a plane and go to my mom, or I can, drive over to the apartment and take care of things. It really changed how people are looking at setting up care and intervention for their family. So that's sort of the third reason that people reach out. The fourth reason, and which is the best reason, is sort of an understanding that some things are better outsourced. You can provide better care and support via a professional sometimes than you can yourself, and it doesn't make you a less of a doting daughter or a supportive family member. It's just that there are other people who can do it better, whether it's because they're objective or they're from the outside or they just know, they have the experience and the knowledge and are better at tapping into Bituach or scheduling an appointment with a professional. So those are sort of the doors that people walk into.
It's,
Once we're in the door,
yeah.
sorry.
No, no, I was just saying, it's interesting what you were saying about the children or even the spouse that feel that they need help, they can't do everything. I think it's actually nicer when they have somebody because then they can concentrate on the personal memories that afterwards they won't have anymore. Whereas if they're busy doing all the bureaucracy, which we know it takes forever and ever, and it's very frustrating that that's all they're going to be doing, and then they're going to forget that actually mom is sitting right there. I can read with her a book, or I can listen to a song, like to music with her, and we can talk about her wedding or whatever it is, which might be even more important, which nobody else can do but you.
We had a client who after she passed, her daughter reached out and she said, "Thank you for allowing us to just be her daughters in these final years of life. Like, thank you for removing all this tension and stress and busy work and just allowing us to be with her and visit with her and spend quality time with her." And we see it and you see it. When you have to deal with all this stuff, you can spend your entire afternoon with your mother, trying to get her logged into the Maccabi website and trying to get an appointment for this and trying to set up the computer repair guy. And you can get so bogged down in all of it. And it's also not necessarily, it's not quality time, right? Everybody's annoyed and everybody's frustrated and it's hard. The flip side to that, I think, and this is just sort of food for thought, is sometimes it's easier to deal with all that than
Of
to deal
course.
with watching a parent who's struggling with dementia or dealing with our own challenges and seeing a parent age or letting go of a parent. Sometimes it's a lot easier to immerse ourselves into the busy work, so I mean, that's just kind of an aside that I've seen as
No, absolutely. I agree with you totally. It's much harder because it's much easier to be in the doing than actually to be in the seeing and in the moment with them and realizing they're not going to last forever, they're not going to be here forever, and they're not the same.
yeah. Yeah, sometimes I see that a lot in the intake, when we do an initial intake with a family and someone reaches out and they call us and they say, "I just need someone to take over all this. I just want someone who I can say, tag, you're it, deal with the caregiver, deal with this, deal with that." And I very often engage them in a conversation at that point and say, "You know what? I can take all of this off of you. This is what we do. We have families that we care for who don't have kids or who don't have kids in Israel. And we really assume the role of the adult caregiver. So there's nothing I can't do. But it's worth having the conversation with yourself and with me. Are you really ready to let that go? Do you really want to let go of that stuff? Because otherwise you're going to bring me on board, but you're going to hold on to control with all of your might. And it's going to be really hard for me to give you value, right?
Mm.
So these are important conversations and there's no right answer. Sometimes people will say to me, "Gosh, you're right. I actually I don't want to build trust with someone else that they're going to be the ones doing this." And like I need to have those kind of short-term goals to deal with. So it's complex. Relationships are complex and care managers, have the really challenging task of, on the one hand, joining a family unit and treating everyone with care and compassion and skill, and on the other hand, acknowledging that they're not actually part of the family unit. You know, they have to kind of manage the chaos and also respect the chaos at the same time. And it's really challenging. It's really, and I'll say also that very often our success with families is directly related to the ability of the family to partner with us. You know, when people come in very stressed and anxious and sad and they want relief and they're angry, you know, that you're not giving them relief right away. And you know, you have to really say care management, it's a process. It's not a magic wand. You know, it's a process and it's a partnership and it's about really working together to make the best possible outcome for everybody.
That's
Anyway.
true. It is complex. It's very complex. So somebody reaches out to you. How do you help? What do you do? What is on offer?
So I'll go back and I'll say it depends, right? Because for every family, it means something different. We have families that were really just a guide, your one-stop shop. You know, any question you have about anything that has to do with aging, we're the last call you need to make. You know, send a WhatsApp to your care manager. If it's how do I arrange the delivery of a hospital bed, to how do I find a foreign worker, to how do I calculate the salary of a foreign worker, to who's the right neurologist in Tel Aviv for someone who has Parkinson's. I mean, it's a vast, or a day center for dementia, or how do I get my mother to shower with dementia? You know, it's this vast array of knowledge that has to do with aging, and we really know the answer to most of it. And if we don't know the answer, we will find it for you. So, on one end of the spectrum, we have people who have a lot of family support, who are here, who just want that one-stop shop. And that's what we are to those people. On the other end of the spectrum, we have people who we are very involved with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, which means we go to the home, we see them once a week. You know, we have put together a master plan of all the different moving parts they need, and we are seeing that plan on a daily basis, scheduling appointments for them, going to appointments for them, ordering supplies if they need it, checking in with a caregiver if they have one, uh, monthly meetings with the families to update and also to help with decision making. You name it, making sure that they have somewhere to go for Pesach, for the Seder, or for Shabbat, and making sure that they got out of the house, that they had fresh air, that they're getting activity. It's really the full spectrum of things. Meeting them in the emergency room if there's a crisis and they need advocacy. You know, one of the things that we say, and it's a little bit, everybody kind of says it, is you should never, ever, ever have an older adult alone in the hospital, not
Right,
for a minute.
right,
And and it's not a criticism of the hospital. It's a reality that, an older adult needs an advocate for them. I mean, all of us kind of do, right? It's not
right.
even a question of age. But they need someone who's there, who's advocating, who's helping. And in some situations, that's just a caregiver, someone who will be next to them, in the hospital to bring them water or help them, or just so they don't feel alone. And in some situations, it's really an advocate, someone who's making sure that this person needs help and needs to be seen and needs to be heard. And so, so that's the sort of crisis management. So that's the two ends of the spectrum of care management. The vast majority of people fall somewhere in the middle. And that's where sort of the true beauty of care management takes place, is that we work with the family to really define what their needs are, where they need us to help, because they don't need us in all of it all the time. Um, and and then we either, ensure that the system is in place or provide the support ourselves. And even then, it's a moving target, right? I mean, where you are today is probably not going to be where you are next week or where you are a month from now. Our real job is to make sure that we are moving with the family to provide the right level of support at the right time as they journey through aging.
Wow. So just as a question, if somebody, God forbid, needs something in the middle of the night or a Shabbat, because it's always, those horrible hours, they can pick up the phone to the person that is assigned to them, sort of, and say, "I need you."
So we're not a bulkhead, right? We're not a call center.
No, no,
So
no. If it's that's the person that takes care of you the whole time, I mean. Like there's somebody that's assigned to him or her.
So the care manager, it's a good question. I'm going to answer something else before I answer that. Um, the role of the care manager is to make sure to think about all the different contingencies and have a plan in place to address them. So it means what happens if there is an emergency on Shabbat?
Right.
The care manager may or may not be available on Shabbat. That's sort of up to that specific care manager in that specific situation. So, but the real role of the care manager is to say, okay, let's anticipate that there's an emergency over Shabbat. What's the plan? Do you press the call button? Does an ambulance come? Do you call the care manager? Do you call the adult child who's in Ra'anana? Do you call the adult child who is in New York? There's no magic answer. The magic answer is let's think through all the different scenarios and make sure that there's a plan that everybody knows what that plan is. The care manager, it is not charged with automatically running to the hospital the minute something happens. But she needs to have a plan in place that will provide support until she can get to the hospital. So, I mean, it's a little bit like, again, what would you, the adult child, do if you were living far away from your parents and you didn't have a care manager in place? You could either leave it to chance and hope that, everything, which,
Goes with
by the way, is what most people do, right? Akodia B'Senem.
right.
Most people say, okay, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And they don't actually put a plan in place. Our job as care managers is to say, let's open this up now and decide who's doing what when. But aside from the emergency situation, yes, the role of the care manager is to have one person who's assigned to a family and who will always be the go-to person and will always be available. That's where our business model is different than a lot of others. Most care managers are sole practitioners. Most business, care managers are people who she or he by themselves are supporting, a handful of people. One of the things that we decided from the very beginning was, we are stronger as a team. We have a team of care managers. We are right now a team of 9. We've just added a 10th who's coming on board soon. And the value of that, cannot be understated, overstated. And it's twofold. It's one, continuity for the client, that there's always somebody, even if you go on vacation, somebody in our team will step in and provide you the same level of coverage. And that team member knows who you are, even though you don't know who they are, because once a week we get together and we talk about everybody. But beyond that, the fact that we are a team, um, factors into everything we do. We problem solve together on WhatsApp daily, in staff meetings weekly. We brainstorm, and we've seen it in action that 10 minds are better than one, always. As a group, we come up with solutions we ask questions, we think through things together that are really ultimately to the advantage of the client. Our clients are getting the benefit of 10 people and not just the one person who they interact with. Very often they don't even know about it.
Right.
Sometimes I talk to a client's family who we've been working with for a year, and they start telling me about their parent. And I'm like, I know, I know everything about you and your family, and I know what he had, at the hospital for dinner. Like, I know. And they're shocked. They're shocked by the level that everybody in the company knows what's going on. But it's really what makes us who we are and differentiates us that we're able to bring that sort of collective process to our clients.
I think that's great. I really like that idea. But as you said, 10 people are much more powerful than only one person, and it's very good that you can bring that. Okay, we're nearly about to end, but I still want to ask you, how long do people use your services for? How does it work?
So that's another complex answer. By definition, if our goal is to maximize someone's autonomy and independence, we don't want to stay longer than we're needed,
Right.
right? So sometimes we swoop in and swoop out. Sometimes we swoop in, fix whatever's broken, set up the family for success, and then say, you know what, you've got it from here. Sometimes it's really in a family's best interest to allow us to stay involved,
Right.
so that we can not have to put out a fire a second time, right? That we can keep things under control, that we can stay on top of things.
Okay.
Um, for example, when someone hires a foreign worker, hiring a live-in caregiver is complex, it's stressful, it's challenging. There's a gazillion components to it. And we're very often very intimately involved in the process. And then there's a piece of time that you've gotten over the hump. And people sort of say, thank you, we don't need you anymore. And then it begs the question, and we say to them, okay. But a caregiving relationship is a relationship. It needs to be mediated, it needs to be supervised, it needs to be, so someone needs to be doing it. It doesn't have to be us, but either we need to sort of train you on the nuances of maintaining this relationship ongoing and addressing, let's say, blips when someone goes on vacation or when someone doesn't work out or when the caregiver's unhappy, or we stay involved. So to answer your question, it really depends on the family. It depends on the level of the support they have on the ground. It depends on why we came in the first place. It depends on budget because we're a private company. But very, very often we stay with clients for the long term in some capacity. Sometimes when people say, we've got this now, we say, you know what, why don't we just sort of come by once a month to see that everything's going on, to maybe spot issues that you're not spotting, to keep things on track and to be able to really effectively step in case of an emergency. So I would say for the most part, once we are involved with the family, we stay on in some capacity until the end of life,
Right.
sometimes beyond. Not always. Sometimes, people just need a really discreet assistance with a discrete issue, and then we step back and find sometimes we find we meet again 2 or 3 years later. So there's like everything in this podcast, I would say it's very specific to the family. But we're available. We're here to stay. Once we join with a family, we are here to stay when you need us, how you need us, for as long as you need us.
That's good. That's comforting, I think, for the family. How do people get in touch with Belev Shalem? How does it work? Through Google? What?
So we have a phone number. Our website gets a lot of traffic. A lot of people just send us a WhatsApp and say, please call me. And
So do
we
you
we
want to tell
do.
us the number of your WhatsApp?
I could, but I would have to look it up.
Okay, okay. And in the meantime, so in the meantime, there's also a website, right? Belev
Right.
Shalem.
So everything's on our website, www.belevshalem.com. It's BLEVSHALEM. We also have a very active Facebook community called Sandwich Generation Israel
Nice.
with over 3,000 members. We spend a lot of time making sure that that group gives value. There's no advertising, there's no spam, there's no cute videos. It's really a value-based group. We get a lot of good feedback from people on there. And people are really kind to each other there. They offer each other support, they offer each other advice. It's a great place for resources. And that links to our Facebook page, Belev Shalem, which also you can contact us through there. But even if you just put in Google Belev Shalem, or care management in Israel, you can get to us that way. And now I have the phone number.
Okay, great.
It is, uh, wow, I thought I had the phone number. Now I do. 058-422-6609. That's our office phone number.
Perfect.
Um,
Perfect. Okay,
and
well, sorry, go ahead.
no, I loved being here. It's
Thank you so much for being here. It was so important. I really, really appreciate it. It was hard getting you here, but I'm really happy we did it. So thank you
technology to
very much.
podcast. So
Thank you very much for being us with us tonight. Thank you, people, for watching. Have a good night. Stay safe. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in my next podcast. Bye bye.
thanks, Marie. It was really great.